Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of September 26th, 2011. Welcome to the site to all you new members. Welcome back to the old members. This is the Ask Videomail, your chance to get a question in a character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. I need your questions if I'm going to answer them though, so please, if you've never sent a question in, it's the best way to get the most value out of your subscription to KennyRoy.com. It's very easy, just send your question to webmaster@KennyRoy.com. Looking forward to seeing some questions from some new members. Let's definitely up the number of questions you're sending in. If you've never sent one in, give it a try. I promise it's painless, and you might be excited to see your question answered in a video just like this one. And also, it's not fair. There's like maybe 15, 20 people who are asking all the questions, and they're getting all the fun. So take advantage of it. I implore you. This week's video mail is an interesting question. It's an interesting blend between theory and technique. I think you're going to like it. Let's take a look. Okay, excellent. So this is an interesting question because it asks about video reference, and rather than analyze video reference in front of you again, we've already done a video mail like that. Rather than just copy video reference, I want to talk about two of the issues that are prevalent in doing something like, let's say, a flip. Okay. The first is that there is no really easy way to get all of the controls working for you besides using the master controller, and some technical problems come about when you start doing that, namely where the pivot point is. And you don't want to change the pivot point because that would be doing a hierarchical change, or shall we say that is outside the purview of what you should be doing if you're an animator on a show. For instance, a creature feature or a CG animation. The other problem is theory. So that's technique. The other problem is theory, which is where is the center of gravity on the flip. So we're going to look at those things. I'm going to show you some ways that you can keep these things kind of in the forefront of your mind so that you don't get confused. If you haven't already, you should download the Bloke model. It's available on creativecrash.com. It's the one I use the most often because it's a free model or a free rig that you can use and you can follow along. But mostly I use it because it's very simple and it has easy access to the super, simple basic controls. So go ahead and create a reference or open up your Bloke rig. So let's talk about first the technique problem. So we have Bloke right here, and if we wanted to flip him, we could do a couple things. Right now, his arms are FK and his legs are IK. If we switch both of his arms and his legs to FK, like this, then we can use his root control to move him around. But that might be a problem for you. That might end up being not what you want because, let's say you want to keep his legs in a certain pose. You want to make sure that the transition in that pose looks good, all those things. So rather than doing that, I'm just going to show you how to quickly make a constraint where you can use, that you can use so that you can actually use the world mover and actually get, no matter what, if they're FK or IK. Let me put this into IK. In fact, let's put all of these into IK. All right, you see how this would be a big problem doing something like a flip, right? Because they would just go like that. You can use the world mover. On Bloke, it's actually called the super mover. You can use the super mover, okay? So what we're just going to do is we're going to create a locator. Okay, now this locator, let's make it nice and big. Okay, in fact, that's kind of boring. If you have the script, it's called KK controllers. KK controllers, and this is a script. Again, it's available for free on creativecrash.com, and it basically is just a script that has all of these nice, neat little movers and controls, and they're great. You can see the ball here. I'm just going to create this one, which is a very fancy mover, and there's no way we could ever mistake that, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to just hide that for now, okay? And we're going to key this like he's going to be doing a backflip. So let's just key this very, very, very lightly, okay? We're not going to go too wild. I'm going to just do what I normally do, which is grab all of the IK controls and then make a quick select set so that I can key just these pretty easy. I'm just going to call these IKs, okay? Oops, I should probably put that on the shelf instead. IKs, there we go. All right, so I'm going to set a key right here and then pose him in his anticipation. Okay. In fact, let's just close his hands because it just looks weird when he's... There we go. And what you want to notice that I'm doing is also just making sure that all the controls that I am touching, I am going to set a key back on frame 1. Okay. Okay. So let's go forward and rebuild this pose. Okay. He's going to basically swing his arms on this, but we're not going to do any in-betweens, just like the major poses. Okay. We're not even going to key the spine actually right now. We're just going to, so normally we'd have the spine bending over and whatever. Okay. So here's our anticipation pose. Let's say this is going to be 48 frames. I guess that's okay. And then we're going to have his takeoff pose, basically. Okay. So what we're looking for is the moment when it looks like the character is going to leave the ground. All right, and this is fine because in the end, the best thing to basically key this around is that moment. But you don't have to actually have to be super on the money because you can do some adjustment as well. So we're just going to key it up. In fact, let's make him just a little bit further down, dipping down into his knees. Okay. Okay. In fact, let's just really quickly, let's just set a key on 1 and 8 on everything. Okay. So now frame 12, let's say this is the moment where he leaves the ground. So I'm going to key everything. I'm going to key the whole pose. It's going to be a little bit of, it's called heel peel. Sometimes this is called foot raise. He's doing a backflip. He's going to be swinging his arms backwards and then tucking his legs. Okay? So this is the moment we're calling that he actually leaves the ground. All right? So let's unhide that controller that we made, and let's find his center of gravity and just figure out where it would be. He's very up on his tiptoes, and so I would say it's pretty much over his center. He's leaning backwards a little bit, but also his arms are forward. So I would say it's pretty much in his center. And the reason we want to put it pretty much in his center, we want to bias that center of gravity towards the center no matter what, because of the fact that when the flip happens, we want a pivot point that makes sense, that when we bring his knees to his chest, everything looks good. Okay? So now we're going to take that mover and we're going to parent constrain. Constrain parent, make sure maintain offset is on, to the super mover. All right. Now on this frame, we can hit S for set key and make sure blend parent is 1. And then if you open up that parent constraint as well, the curve, it's called curve 1. You can also key that. Okay. Now let's go to the frame before and make the constraint to the curve and the blend parent 0. Okay? So then if we move this around, nothing happens. But if we look on frame 12, it actually starts moving. So we're going to set a key on frame 12, and then we're going to do basically a bouncing ball. So let's just go frame 8, and then frame 12 to 18, so that'd be 24. Can actually copy this, okay? And what I'm going to do is because I know I want it to do a backflip, I want the rotate X actually to be 360 degrees. Oops. Or let's say negative 360 instead, sorry. Let's also go on frame 18 and make sure that the curve looks good. We can adjust this Y curve in the graph editor. Why? Because we know it's a bouncing ball. So let's just flat this tangent. Let's break this tangent, sorry, rather. Let's make these both nice and fast in and fast out. We can also weight this tangent. Let's unify this tangent, actually. How do we unify? Here we go. And let's make it a nice plateau at the top, okay? Okay. So here we go. Now we have the character jumping and landing. And now the nice thing about this, again, is that we have a pivot point that makes sense for the way we would want this to work. Now, one of the cool things, again, is that you can turn off evaluation of this constraint. You can either mute the channel by going to the curve, the super mover, and hitting mute selected, and then nothing happens. So what's cool about that is you know that on frame 24 he needs to land, so we can set the key and then have him basically do his settle. And let's also frame 24 set this and have him no more heel peel. Okay. So basically he goes up and then lands like that. He's a little too tall. Sorry. Still too tall. And still too far forward. Just doing a little key adjusting. Okay, smoothing stuff out. Okay. So again, we have basically our settle. All right. So he does his jump and then that's his landing. Boom. Okay. So let's unmute this channel on the blend parent, unmute selected, and then watch this happen. Okay. Now, again, that's kind of hard to watch. It's hard to build a pose as well when it's going so crazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to mute this again. And then on frame 18, he's supposed to have his legs basically tucked up to his chest. So let's do that. Let's turn off heel peel. Okay. And he's supposed to be bent over a little bit. Let's just make sure that everything's working fine. Let's go right here and just bend him over just a little bit. Okay. Brings his knees up and then back down. Okay. Okay, so let's unmute this one more time and we're going to watch. On frame 24 as well, he definitely needs to have his hands. So bring him down, forward, up and back. And then right by here, he starts bringing them forward again. I'm just keying this really quickly because it's not as fun to watch me keyframe as it is to watch the final results. So let's just do a simple, quick landing on these hands. Very, very quick and dirty. Okay, here we go. Okay, cool. So now we know we have a pivot point that works. We don't have to use this crazy thing. Like, how hard is it to get him to rotate around the center of his body by using this? You have to translate it and rotate it. Now, most productions will have a pipeline where you can't just implement this and not tell anybody, because if they are referencing in your animation, every once in a while you can't have a constraint over the top node of your character. So they'll want all the animation on the controls of the character. That's not a problem at all. What you'll do is you'll save this animation. So I'm going to go save scene as. I'm actually going to save, I'll give you guys this version right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to bake the animation, and then when we're done, it'll be like no one will ever know that you didn't animate using the main control. Okay, so I'm going to call this flip. There we go. So all you have to do is any channel that has a constraint on it will show the constraint in the graph editor like this. Okay, and it's very simple. Your translate and rotate channels, just select them and go to curves, bake channel, open up the options, and make sure sample by 1 is on there. Okay, and then if you hit bake, what will happen is, let's look at the rotate X. As you can see, it does a negative 360. Let's look at the Y. It does that little jump. Okay, and it doesn't look like the nice parabola. Why? Because the pivot point is on this is not in the center. So in order to get that perfect motion, look, this is how complex that Y curve is. How much time would you waste trying to get your Y curve to look like this if you didn't have a new controller? All right, and then you can just select this and delete it and watch your animation back, and your character is doing his backflip. Okay, now no TD will ever know that you did this using a constraint. All right, just be sure you save that version that had the constraint on it, because that's the one you're going to use to edit this animation. If you do this, then you have a channel, or you have all your transform channels on the super mover, and they have a key on every single frame. This would not be too hard to recreate if you wanted to just bake a buffer curve like this, and then you show buffer curves. I know you can't see it because it's kind of the same color right now, but the curve is right here, and it's not. This would not be too hard really to recreate. I kind of just did. There. So you could go through this, see how I just recreated. You could go through this and basically, fix it if you really wanted to. But I mean, I would just, if I were you, I would just hang on to that version that has the constraint. Okay. So to answer your question, you want to look at the center of gravity, but you need a pivot point there so that you can have him rotate around his center of gravity, right? So this is an interesting question because it's a blend of kind of like technical and theory. So take a look at this scene, see if you can recreate what I did, and don't be afraid to flip your character around or do really complex off-the-wall moves, because you're protected. You have all the tools you need in every single character rig that I can find to do extremely complex moves without any technical problems. So keep the questions coming. This was a fun one to answer, and thank you for that. Good luck with your animation, and as always, rock on.